Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. The easiest way to access our podcast is simply to go to iTunes or Google Play and just search for the BamaInsider.com podcast. We have weekly podcasts that bring you Alabama recruiting and team coverage. So thanks again for subscribing and listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. Here we go with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. Hey, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com alongside Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. What's up, Bone?
Hey, what's going on?
Man, another week is here. Big recruiting, big game on the horizon, man. I'm stoked.
Yeah, it was we just had a big weekend down in Tuscaloosa, and it's gonna be another big weekend out in College Station this weekend.
So this coming weekend against Texas A&M, Alabama's favored as a 25-point favorite. You biting that? I mean, it's on the road at Kyle Field. I mean, what's your take on the game, Bone?
I'll tell you, Alabama's they've been blowing these teams out lately. I mean, they're playing at a different level. I mean, it's tough to go on the road and win in the SEC, regardless. But I think looking at that line, I mean, it's a big line. But would it really surprise anyone if Alabama goes out there and wins by 35, 42 points? I don't think so. I mean, I think there's a possibility of that happening. But Texas A&M, they've recruited extremely well. They have a lot of really good athletes on their team, and we'll just have to see how they perform this week. But I think it'll be an interesting matchup. But I think Alabama will come out and probably cover the spread. We'll see how it goes.
All right, so there's a lot to recap, and we're online with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. You're listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. And going forward, you can download or subscribe to any of our future podcasts by simply going into iTunes or Google Play and looking for the BamaInsider.com podcast. And we have a lot of podcasts coming your way, and it's a great way to access the content, listen while you're at the gym, on the go. We're bringing it to you every single way, and, of course, all our coverage back on Bama Insider. Let's recap the huge weekend in Tuscaloosa. I mean, there were some big official visitors. Did Bama make any ground up with guys like Justin Fields or Emil Ezekiel?
Well, it was a big weekend, and you have to first start talking about the official visitors. You had a couple guys who were committed to Alabama, Tommy Brown and Slade Bolden, which, if you haven't read the stories from on our website at BamaInsider.com, on Slade Bolden or Tommy Brown, I strongly recommend you going and seeing those stories because they are excellent. I mean, those guys provided some great quotes from the weekend visit. We spoke with Emil Ezekiel about his trip, and he said he has a lot to think about. I mean, he's visited Alabama 3 times now. He's a 4-star offensive lineman from Indianapolis, been committed to Michigan for a good while. But as I said, he's visited Alabama 3 times and really likes the Crimson Tide a lot. He's a highly recruited prospect by Alabama. I mean, he's one of those guys that they've considered a top priority for a long time and one that they really want in their recruiting class. So I think he still has an official visit to take to Michigan. I think he's taking that the Penn State weekend, and then shortly after that he's going to make a decision. And I think Alabama has a good chance with him, and they will continue to heavily pursue him up until he makes his commitment. So our I guess final decision. He's already committed to Michigan, but we'll see what happens there. Justin Fields, that was big to get him on campus this past weekend for an official visit. It really wouldn't surprise me if that's his last visit to Tuscaloosa. I mean, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country, 5-star recruit out of the state of Georgia. And this is his second visit. This was his second visit to Alabama, but I really can't see him joining Alabama's class. I mean, I know some people have said, "Oh, Alabama made up a lot of ground with them this weekend." Well, of course they did. I mean, it was an official visit weekend. You have so much going on. You have such a great time on these official visits. It's hard not to enjoy yourself and have a good time and say a lot of positive things about the visit. But that doesn't mean that he's going to all of a sudden commit to Alabama or favor Alabama. Alabama's still, in my opinion, probably number 5 or number 4 on his list of top 5 schools that he's going to officially visit. And I'm not saying that to make Alabama fans think, oh, Alabama can't recruit. Well, they have a couple young quarterbacks in Tuscaloosa, and he's only visited Alabama twice. He's visited several other schools, a lot of other times, and Alabama has a good chance to potentially flip a guy like Emory Jones, who's a five-star quarterback out of Georgia. They have a chance with Jaron Williams, the four-star quarterback, also out of Georgia, who's committed to Kentucky. So those are the two quarterbacks right now I would pay more attention to than Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields, amazing talent. Alabama fans are going to hear that name for a long time, but I don't think they're going to be hearing about it from being a quarterback in Tuscaloosa.
If you could go a little bit deeper on guys like Emory Jones, who's committed to Ohio State, Jaron Williams, also committed to Kentucky, those guys are still in the mix for Alabama, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I pay very close attention to Emory Jones. And Chad Simmons, Southeast recruiting analyst for Rivals, posted a big note on the Alabama site on Bama Insider. Yeah, I think it was yesterday about Emory Jones, or maybe it was the day before. Just talking about the visit and how much he thinks Alabama's a contender for him. I think this was his third or fourth visit to Tuscaloosa in the last 6 months, and there's definitely some interest there. And he's been committed to Ohio State for more than a year. I think it may have been he may have been committed for 2 years, but I think the proximity to home may have a big impact on him. And I would pay very close attention because this past weekend was just an unofficial visit. He's going to make it a return trip to Alabama for an official visit down the road. Could be for the LSU game in November, but I pay a lot of attention to Emory Jones from here on out because Alabama's certainly in the race for him. He's, like I said, a five-star quarterback out of the state of Georgia, major prospect. And then Jaron Williams, I've been mentioning on our website for a little while about some players who are committed elsewhere who are still showing interest in Alabama. I didn't mention any names, but Jaron Williams was one of those guys that I've been referencing to the last few weeks. Then all of a sudden he made a trip to Tuscaloosa for the game, and I certainly expect him back in Tuscaloosa again. He's a four-star quarterback out of Georgia, been committed to Kentucky for a little while. He actually decommitted from Kentucky once he started getting a lot of interest during the spring, but recommitted to Kentucky. They really put the full court press on him, made sure that he felt like he was their number one overall guy for their recruiting class, and just went ahead and jumped back on board. But now starting to take some visits, and Alabama's one of those schools that he likes, and Alabama likes him a lot too. So we'll see what happens there, but Alabama has some quarterback prospects that they really like, and I think that they got a chance to. I mentioned earlier about Justin Fields. I don't think he's going to be in the class, but I think they have a good chance with Jaron Williams or Emory Jones.
You're listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. Be sure and subscribe to any of our podcasts. Just go onto iTunes or Google Play. Look for the BamaInsider.com podcast. Speaking with Andrew Bone, our recruiting analyst. Today is October 5th, prepping for Texas A&M. Andrew Bone dropping some major recruiting scoop. You can get this every single day on BamaInsider.com. Bone, major target, Jalen Waddell, return to Tuscaloosa. What does Alabama? Where does Alabama stand for him?
Well, I think they're in the lead. I think he has been a major priority target for Alabama since Brian Dable went and saw him during the spring, and Alabama really has made him really. I mean, even though they have Justin Ross in the state of Alabama as a five-star recruit, I think Jalen Waddell is the top overall target at the wide receiver position, and I think they've made him feel that way. He made it over to Atlanta for the Florida State game, and returned to Tuscaloosa this past weekend for the for the game against Ole Miss. And I expect him in Tuscaloosa at least a few more times this year before he makes his decision. But Alabama's got a great shot with him. He's a Rivals 100 wide receiver out of Houston, and he's a major target. But there's some other schools that are still fighting for him. He likes Florida State. He likes Texas A&M, TCU, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to end up choosing Alabama, and he's got some guys that are in Alabama's recruiting class who are recruiting him and who are talking to him just about every single day. So we'll see what happens there, but I think Alabama's got an unbelievable chance to land his signature.
Coinus Miller made another trip to Alabama. Has Alabama closed the gap with Florida and Auburn?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Some people were saying, yeah, they've closed the gap. I don't really see it that way. I think Alabama's still kind of on the outside for him. He's announcing his decision on October the 14th, so that's a week from Saturday. He says that Florida's still ahead and that Auburn's still number 2 and Alabama's number 3. Has Alabama maybe closed the gap a little bit with Auburn? Potentially, but as of right now, I still see him announcing between between Florida and Auburn. I mean, he's a great football player. It's a big position of need for Alabama. Alabama really wants to add some defensive linemen in this class, and he's been a top priority target for them for a long time. But I think that he just has a higher interest right now in Florida and Auburn. Now, maybe he commits to one of those 2 schools, and then Alabama continues to recruit him, and maybe he takes an official visit down the road. It would not surprise me if he decides to do that, but we'll see what happens. But I think as of right now, Alabama's still behind those 2 schools.
Now, I wanted to get your take on this. Now, it looks like could be some coaching turmoil going forward, or at least these teams are at least struggling. And you got schools like LSU and Tennessee that just aren't making the mark this year. Let's talk about the situation that is going on at those schools, and does it open the door for Alabama with some of these prospects that might be decommitting because of a potential shakeup going forward?
Well, absolutely, and we saw a big decommitment the other day. Kelvin Joseph out of Baton Rouge, Rivals 100 defensive back, decommitted from LSU, has been a big target for the Crimson Tide for a long time. That's certainly a big name to keep an eye on, because I think Alabama has a good chance to add him in the class. Which, the situation down at LSU has been the favorite for a few major targets, including Patrick Surtain, 5-star defensive back out of Florida. One of the top 5 overall players in the country. LSU's been considered the favorite from the get-go. Now, I don't think that's the case. I think Alabama has possibly pulled it even with them. And he likes some other schools too. He likes Florida State, likes Florida. So I think LSU is starting to fade for Patrick Surtain a little bit. Nadab Joseph, who is a Rivals 100 defensive back, also out of Florida, decommitted prior to the season from LSU. But a lot of people think it's between LSU and Alabama still, and he really likes Alabama. I think Alabama's the favorite for him. Speaking about Tennessee, there's some rumors about Cade Mays, 5-star offensive lineman, been committed to Tennessee for a very long time, almost 2 years. Had shown some interest in Alabama early on, but committed to Tennessee. Like I said, he's from Tennessee, from Knoxville, so it's hard not to commit to the Volunteers when you live up there. But it looks like he's going to start maybe taking some visits. Looks like he's maybe interested in Alabama, may take a visit to Clemson, but I think he's going to still weigh the situation. If Butch Jones gets fired, who does Tennessee hire? Is it a guy that he likes or he knows? Will he be the number 1 priority when a new coach is hired? By the Vols. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But yeah, I think with the coaching situations at several schools, it's going to be it's got a chance to really make a big impact for Alabama, and with Alabama have a few guys in the end that they weren't expecting.
You're listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Andrew Bone, our recruiting analyst. All our coverage back on BamaInsider.com. Bone, before we let you go, you do a weekly feature. It's called Following the Future. When you're going through all the commitments for Alabama on the weekly stats, how they fared, are there any guys that continue to jump out weekly for you?
Well, yeah, there's Jordan Davis up in Memphis, the Rivals 100 defensive end. I feel like he's averaging about 5 tackles for loss every single week. He's just having an unbelievable football season. Slade Bolden's having a great year. Tommy Brown, who just visited Alabama, took his official visit. Right now, his team, Mater Dei High School, currently rated as the number 1 high school football program in the country, just killing everybody they're playing, and they're going up against some big national competition. So those guys are having great years. Vernon Jackson, recent commitment, having a good year playing quarterback for his high school team. Expected to play linebacker in Tuscaloosa, but he's having a really good year. And then Trey Sanders out at IMG Academy, Another guy that's having I think every single week he has a long touchdown run, and ING's playing up against some great competition. And I can't forget about Pierce Quick, Rivals 100 2019 offensive lineman at Hewitt-Trussville. Hewitt also rated as one of the top overall high school football programs in the entire country. Their offense is just having an unbelievable year, and he's helping pave the way for that attack.
You want recruiting scoop every single day? Visit BamaInsider.com for recruiting coverage, team coverage. We got you locked and loaded on BamaInsider.com. For Kyle Henderson and Andrew Bone, we'll see you back on BamaInsider.com.